Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing some walk cycle stuff. We did the walk cycle earlier, however, I just wanted to do a quick walk cycle for y'all to get it more cemented into your knowledge because we only did just a walk cycle in one place. Um, Basically, we're going to be doing the same sort of process but just with a rig that has arms. So I'm going to reference in my character. I'm just going to use the main guy from the game that I'm working on. Right there. Mine is doing its best to load. There we go. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to expand this grid so I can, I'm just going to adjust the project settings. I'm going to be working at 30 frames per second, but you guys will be working at 24 frames per second. So just keep that in mind. I'm also going to change this to meter. Boom. Okay. So a lot of you guys have the characters walking throughout your scene. And you might think like, oh, okay, so I have to animate them walking forward. Well, no, you can do the same method that we were doing before. Also note that changing the time to 24 made my timeline all strange there. So now I'm starting at frame 1 again. But remember, we have this top control over everything, so we can move the entire character. So what we can basically do is move the character's controls, have him walking in place, and then we're going to loop those keys and then have them traveling throughout our scene. So if you need to walk forward, you would just have all of these controls looping. Wait a second, let me turn off joints. So I'm just going to turn off none. I'm just going to do polygons. Where are you at? Polygons, there we go. And I'm going to enable curves. So now I can just know that I'm only selecting that stuff. And I'm going to deselect the mesh. But yeah, so we're going to get these controls moving and doing the walk cycle. And then we're going to use this one, this bottom one, to drive the animation forward. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to set a key here on the timeline, and I'm going to turn on something called auto keying. So right in the bottom corner here, it's, when this is red or highlighted red, you know that auto key's enabled. And what that does is if I move my timeline over here, instead of having to press S to get a key here, well, because I haven't moved the control yet, it's not going to do anything, so I would have to press S right there. But if I move it over here, look at the bottom of the timeline when I let go of my mouse. Boom. So it puts that key right there automatically for us. I find this to be the superior method of working. That way I'm not like having to press S to set the key for that pose on every time that I move a control. But yeah, so we're going to go back there. Now I'm going to check out this curve of this animation that we have here. It's very basic, but you guys need to understand the graph editor. So we moved our character forward in Z, right? We moved him along the blue axis. So now you'll see our graph editor is the exact same. Moved him along in Z. If you look at Y, it didn't even set any keys because the only value that changed was Z. So that's what it's doing there. I'm gonna key everything though, and then you'll see here that if it's highlighted red like this, everything is keyed on that frame for that selected control. Hero main C. If I move over here, you'll see that they're pale but still highlighted. That means that there's like keyed animation on these channels, but you're not on the frame where they are keyed. See how I move over here? That's when it becomes highlighted, that deep red. That's how you know you're on a frame that is keyed. So now I have a bunch of channels like this. The same thing that goes for this translate Z is also true for translate Y. When I move this up, he goes up and down. Translate X, same thing. He's going to go left and right. There you go. Rotate. You see how he's tilting there? So you need to become comfortable with what these values mean. And at this point, it's a lot easier to comprehend since you guys have been moving things along X, along Z, along Y, all that stuff, you know. So, so here we go. Now, you'll have this curve going throughout your scene, right? And you'll have the walk looping on top of this. But this, you see how that it slows in and slows out in the animation? So let me shrink this down to 20 frames. Boom, boom. See how it slows in? It's because this curve is slowing in. Or it slows out of this key and slows into this one. So our walks, on the other hand, are at a constant rate. So what you'll have to do here at the end is change the tangents of this. And this is where you get your tangent controls up here. And you're going to want to switch to linear. So now you'll see moving at a constant speed throughout versus you see how that is. That's smoother, but it's improper because we're not moving. We don't slow in and slow out our like overall speed when we're walking. We keep a constant speed when we're walking. So that's going to be the setup. And I'm going to keep my controls in FK for the arms because it's just easier to keep track of things there. So we have IK, FK right here. You can switch between them by putting in 0. So now this is an IK control. And you can move it around like that. But I'm going to keep it in FK just because our arms aren't going to be touching anything. They're not going to be holding on to anything. So it's like it's going to be a lot easier for us to animate like that. And let's start setting up some key poses now. So animation is basically entirely about posing. I'm going to add this to a display layer and make it reference so I don't have to keep selecting it. There we go. Perfect. So animation is all about our key poses, right? And our good friend Richard Williams, he wrote the animation survival handbook, and it's the go-to for, you know, intro stuff for animation. Like, it has great information on this. So these are gonna be the key poses that we hit right here. You get the contact, down, pass position, up, contact. So it's basically going to be five key poses that we're going to be looking at in here, and we're going to do some. We're going to set the keys in Maya for that, so it's going to be the same thing. But yeah, so keep this in mind. So we're going to start with a contact. So now I'm going to set I'm going to start moving my controls around. On contact, I always find that it's easier to kind of move the waist down a little bit because your legs are spread apart at this point in the walk. So we need to spread out the legs right here. Boom. Boom. And notice how the foot is raised up there. I'm going to use toe or a heel ball right there. You see how I'm able to control how that moves. I'm going to use that right there. I'm going to keep these. Notice how the pelvis is pretty much halfway over these, halfway between both the contacting and the point of like his back foot as well, his supporting foot. So I'm going to try to keep that halfway between. There we go. And I'm just gonna drag, select, and set a key on everything, just so I know that there is a key on every single control here. That way, when we start moving stuff around, auto key is gonna be able to set keys automatically for us. I'm also gonna save my scene. So now I need to get this into a more natural pose. So let's not bring it so close to his body. I'm also going to rotate down this clavicle a little bit because the clav is at a more resting position normally. You guys don't need to worry about this, but I'm going to kind of adjust this shoulder to kind of get it closer in and not clip into his armor as much. So it looks like it's more more on his body. So right here. And it's always great, guys, to use reference. I use reference a lot when I'm animating because you're going to be able to observe how your body moves and just works with different posing, because you're going to be, basically animation is physics if you think about it. Like the reason that this next pose, the down, is down is because his center of mass, his pelvis, the one that has a lot of the weight of his entire body, is moving forward, right? And then this leg has to apply the force back to bring him up into this pass position, right? So this pose right here happens because the weight is being caught by that foot, and then it's applying the push to bring you forward into the next pose. So when you're animating, you end up thinking a lot about physics, like where limbs need to be in order to catch the weight, in order to kind of push you throughout the scene, whatever you're animating. So I'm gonna move this in, boom, bang, and I'm gonna make this not completely zeroed out because people don't walk with the most stiff arms you've ever seen. Yeah, so. And let's bring this in a little bit. Kind of get a more naturalistic pose. He's very straight up right now, so I'm going to kind of rotate the spine controls just a little bit forward, because you'll notice that the body's a little bit forward in this as well. And there we go. And I'm going to rotate his head back upright and keep his eyes looking forward. So that's pose one. I'm going to move this arm a little bit forward so he's moving a little bit. And then I'm going to set that key again. I don't really need to because I know I said it before, but I just want to be sure, you know. And so we also have to think about our timeline. So so if you think about, I was just making sounds there to think about where those footfalls are going to go. So it's going basically the opposite pose of this one. It's going to be at 10/11. I should probably make this 21. Speed. I'm gonna increase the scene length because I don't think it's enough time. I'm gonna do 25. So that should be good. I should definitely. I'll definitely have to show you how to like retime keys as well. But we need to get our other pose in here, and I'm gonna skip these, basically all of these ones, and then go to the opposite contact, right? So it's basically going to be this same pose. I'm going to set a key automatically just so I know exactly where that's going to lie. You can see the graph editor now has that information in there. And I'm going to start moving these controls. Get 0 rotate, and increase heal ball. What did we put that up to on this one? 4. 4, and then, okay. So I basically just copied those values over to this other foot. And there we go. And I should be able to just copy this key onto this control. And there you go. So now our feet are swapped. We'll have to do the same for the arm. And we'll see if we can... Normally I would go in and just pose these out, but I'm going to check if I can copy these keys over just to save some time. So I'm right-clicking the timeline and then doing copy. You can also copy a series of keys in the timeline by holding Shift and left-click dragging on the timeline. You can also do the same in here. And then you can right-click, copy, and then right-click, paste wherever you want. But yeah, I'm going to see if I can copy all these. So I'm going to do, your selection order matters when you're copying keys over to controls. So I'm starting from the clav and I'm going down to the wrist. Clav, down to the wrist. Let's see. This might not work because of how rotations are. But yeah, looks like they work. Awesome. Very cool, very cool. And I'm going to copy this pose because now I need to swap it over to this, right? Because in this pose the arm's forward, so I'm going to copy those keys of the arm being forward. In this pose, this arm needs to be forward, so I'm going to copy or paste it on this one. And be careful with your selection order. It does matter. You need to keep the same selection order for all that. So now you see that. There you go. Delicious, delicious. And just to get this done, I'm gonna copy the entire, like every single key's first pose and end pose, or and paste it onto the end pose. That way it loops back into itself, right? Perfect, perfect. And you can, so now is basically, I'll show you how to loop your keys. I'm going to deselect the main control because I don't want that on this, because we're looping all the other controls besides the main control, right? And we're using the main control to animate through the scene. So, oops. So we have this animation, and I want to preview it as looping view. You're gonna have to check infinity, and you'll see that those curves now extend on past the timeline, right? But if in curves right here, if I do post infinity cycle, you'll see how these curves now are like they're like tracking the loop in onto infinity, and you don't have to manually copy and paste this in the timeline a bunch of other times. Pre-infinity, I'm going to cycle as well. Boom. And this only works with like a looping piece of animation. So if you were to have a different pose at the beginning, like say back here somewhere, and then it blends into this loop, then you would see when it tries to loop it, it would start looping this key as well. So this key would be right here, and then it'd be like, what's going on, sir? Like it's just gonna be offset. So don't So don't do this if your animation is not looping. But for scenes where you're walking through something, then this will be fine for that. And then the last step would be to I deleted that key in the middle, because if I leave it there and then move it forward, you're going to see that it's not moving forward throughout. So I need to get this key out of here. I'm just going to do this in the graph editor as well, because since that's on the z-axis, right, the z translate, because it's moving through space, you need to adjust this curve and see. This is where we need to pay attention to tangents, because our character's walking, but this needs to be straightened out. That way he's walking at a constant speed. And you notice there's like some foot slide stuff in there. So our foot is currently going too fast for it, because it's actually like it's going back into space. Look at this foot. It's going back into space as we're moving forward. So this control needs to move a little bit faster. So what we can do is kind of just speed that up and see where it's at. Still sliding a little bit back. So there you go. That's getting closer. I currently think this is a little bit too fast for a regular walk. It's like he's got places to go, dude. So I'm gonna slow this a little bit down, and we're gonna fix the foot sliding later. And but that's gonna be fine for now. I just wanted to preview how it's gonna look walking throughout the scene. So I'm deleting that key, and we need to animate the rest of these poses. We need to get some poses in here. We only have contact and then the other contact. We need all these middle ones. So I'm gonna do the pass position. And so if this is a contact and this is contact, right here, halfway through the timeline, then my pass position has to be between that, halfway between that. So, and you'll see that Maya's kind of already interpolating that type of motion for us. So what we need to do is make those poses work. Like in Maya's best efforts, it's kind of like raised this off the ground. The pelvis is still not moving at all, and as you can see, this is where it's at its highest point. So let's get that opened. So I'm looking at frame 7. This foot needs to be the one supporting the weight, because it's landing, and then we'll drag across the ground, then lift up again. But for now, it's going to be on the ground right there. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start moving this around. You'll see that we're getting keys on there. I'm just going to set a key as well, for just so I can see it in the graph editor. And this is our translate Y, right? So if I move this up and down, it's translating along Y in the world space. So this needs to be zeroed out, because it's going to be flat on the ground at this point. And rotation needs to also be zeroed out. So I'm going to go in and just adjust that. Notice how it's pretty flat on the ground. And we need to zero out heel ball as well, to get it flat on the ground. You see how it's flat, completely supporting. Now, I'm just doing this as a general guide, but keep in mind, like if you're doing like your classic trope of like a sneaky crook, then they're probably gonna have like they're gonna be walking on their tiptoes trying to like rob a bank or something, you know. So like keep all that stuff in mind. Like this is a stylistic. Well, this is an art, right? So like it's gonna have everyone's individual style, like what the character is doing in their performance. Like, so you need to keep all this in mind, but I'm just showing you guys like basic bare bones walk, you know. So I got that foot planted on the ground. Now remember, the pelvis is at its highest point. in the animation now. I'm not going to go right here because you're going to watch this knee right here. It quickly hyperextends, so I'm going to give myself a little breathing room and move it somewhere around here. That way, when he walks, this doesn't pop into place. It's going to be very important. And so there we go. And then we need to start adjusting everything. So this needs to raise up a little bit more. Or it needs to first rotate down, and then we need to clear that distance. So see how it's under the ground now? I'm going to kind of raise it up about above that level. And I'm also going to take that heel ball control off right there. And let's see what our boy Richard Williams says about it. Okay, so he has the leg kind of dragging behind a little bit. Ours is pretty much in the center. So if you want to be Richard, you need to move it a little bit back. This will be fine. Here we go. So we have that control leaving the ground. So we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. We just need to copy this over to the other contact pose. So I usually count out the frames, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 after the key to till the passing pose. And we're going to do the same here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to set a key on everything here. Boom. And I'm going to start copying these keys, so copy. And I'm going to need to paste this onto the other foot, right? So I copied this foot's key. I need to paste it onto that one. Boom. And sometimes Maya doesn't update the viewport. I noticed, I think it's with this, how it kind of pre-renders your timeline now. But if you just move the timeline, it's going to readjust and get it right. Right there. And then we need to go to this one and copy this foot's pose onto the other foot right here, because at that point in time, you're at the different, you're stepping with your left foot, you know, so you need to swap the pose over. So paste, and that's going to work out for us there. You might run into some problems if you have a key. It's out here, because notice now you're in positive X on translate and positive X on translate on this foot will drag it into the other one. So if I tried to copy a key like this and then paste it onto the other one, instead of being over here, it's going to be going to the left, because these are in world space rather than local, or even in local space it would still do this. But in order to fix that, if you wanted something like that, then you would just do, in order to get the opposite, you can do this little trick. You can do times equals -1 in here, and notice how it basically just did it's taking that number and then timesing it by -1, which just makes it the negative version of itself. You can also just type in negative before it, and it'll do the same thing. Times equals is just a little bit more precise. Alright, so we got those in there now. Then we need to copy this, because this is going up in Y, right? So this needs to be, so you can see this curve for the Y translation. I can just move that up. Whoops, move that over to the side. You can move curves and stuff around here with middle click drag. If you're pressing W, you can also scale them. If you press R and then middle click drag. Scaling is kind of more, it's more of a niche thing like that, at least for you guys. Like I'll do it a lot for retiming stuff. because then think about it, if I have my scene, and I'm just going to save before I do this. If I wanted him to take a lot longer to take these steps, I could press R and then middle click drag. And then see how my keys are spread out in time, right? Because this is, as we go left to right, that's time. As we go up and down, that's the value of the keys. So now you'll see that he's walking slower. And I kind of like that speed more, to be honest. You'll see that it kind of pops. That's because our keys are starting from this frame. This is which is like halfway between some other keys, and it's ending halfway between some other keys as well. So we need to move these with W. I'm gonna hold Shift and then middle click and then drag, and you'll see my key is appears at frame 1 because that's where I moved it to. But you'll see that if I don't drag this out, then it's still going to pop at the end. Boom. Because the timeline's ending right here. It needs to end on this key because that's the starting key as well, you know. So I'm going to drag this out. Boom. Right there. And they're starting to walk. They're starting to walk. Perfect. Perfect. So I'm just, in order to save time, because it's like, what are we at now? We're at 30 minutes. Yeah. So I don't want to waste all you guys' time kind of fiddling with this stuff in here. But so you can quickly copy those poses over to each other, and then you have this looping animation, right? And in order to add some polish, I would probably add like some slight twist in here. Just some slight twist right there. Do it right there. And I'd copy that. Remember you got to copy that first pose to the end. So if you ever change that first pose, so now he's kind of twisting a little bit, and you can get in there, do some hip wiggling. But I just want to show you guys how to get it walking through the scene now. So with those keys enabled with infinity, we can start moving this throughout our scene. So it takes 44 frames to get one step in the scene. So if I do 88, then I'll have time for 2 steps basically. And I'm gonna make sure that I only have this main control selected. And I got some extraneous keys that I don't need, so I'm deleting those. And I'm gonna set a key at 88. And you'll see that this is where animation gets a little bit more difficult. Because these footfalls will be kind of improper. So I converted that to linear tangents rather than slow in, slow out. So there you go. But you'll see that like before, the feet are kind of they're kind of sliding on the ground. So your goal as an animator is to try to sell that contact with the ground, right? So let's see, what does this look like now? So that's pretty close. It's not perfect, and one of the reasons it's not perfect is because if you look at your graph editor, so since the waist has to be at a constant speed, we converted this to linear, right? But when these feet move back in space, observe how they do that. So it's using that slow in and slow out on that axis. So we need to get it when it makes contact with the ground. It needs to start it needs to stop moving in there in that space. So you can do you can either animate the control. You can animate this control first for the speed of one step, and then visually compensate for that. And that's probably the easiest way starting out. So I'm gonna show you that. So I'm gonna start going forward in frames. You can swap between keys with the little caret, but it's the period and comma, but it has the caret in there. Oops. Whoa. Okay. And then you can also do instead of pressing period and comma, you can hold Alt and press period to advance one frame, and comma to go back one frame. I bind these to different buttons so I don't have to mess with that. So I'm gonna switch to my hotkeys for that. Oh man! All right, my hotkeys are in 2017, so maybe I'll just say fuck it for now. But yeah, so I'm gonna go to like the halfway pose between this. I'm gonna set a key, and so now if I switch between my keys, you can see that my heel part making contact slides that much forward, like that much further forward, but then it comes back to that position. So this key needs to slide back here. And let's kind of visually swap between those. Okay. So now we need to move that over there. Because I'm trying to sell that pose right there. Notice that the foot also slides back. So what is this looking like now? Very nicely. Right there. So I'm going to convert this translate Z into a linear tangent. Notice how that is now it's kind of going it's going smoother, like more smoothly now. It does kind of impact a little bit too slow. Like you see how it kind of takes like a lot of frames in order to get to the ground right there. So I'm probably going to at frame 3 have it be completely contacted with the ground. Right there. And you can do that through your other values as well. And I'm going to zero out Y right there. And then let's make sure that the let's make sure that the heel doesn't move too much. Okay. So this one we need to take out the Y and the rotate. So if you click in here and then shift click, it's going to select a bunch of channels, but you can isolate 2 channels. I know translate Y from before and rotate X are the culprits. So I'm going to delete those. And now you can go in, start polishing that contact. There. I'm just matching it with the keys before it. Very nice. And then look at the front of that foot. It slides back a little bit, so I'm going to slide it forward. There we go. So now it's contacting at the correct speed, but you'll notice that it leaves the ground abruptly because it still has that translate Z thing right there. And you can go in and adjust these curves individually. Let's see, it should be break tangents. So now I can go into the specific tangents, see how these ones are connected to each other. Makes sense, but these ones I just broke them. So now I can go in and I'm just click dragging over that controller and then middle click dragging, and you can see that this will make it leave the ground more gradually. We're going to need to do this for probably just ease it out even more. So now it's leaving more gradually. But I don't like that very much, because if you go into your scene and then like reset your tangents completely, like if you just did this, like that would mess up your animation a lot, right? Because that's where the tangents are. So I kind of like to set keys here instead that are just that basically retain that shape of that curve, like this. I'd probably move it in a little bit more, and then get that tip lifting off the ground. So yeah, that's what I would do to polish it. But then so that foot's working now. Now it's just a matter of copying those keys over to the other foot. So I'm just going to copy all of that. So remember, we just copied that first pose of the contact, and that's frame 22. I'm going to shrink my timeline just so it makes more sense, because my walk cycle is now 44 frames long. So if I go in here and then paste that, hopefully it shouldn't change, because I don't think it changed the first pose, but then I need to copy in. Remember, that's 2 frames after that first one. So I'm going to go to the contact, 2 frames after, and paste that in there. I'm going to do 3 frames after that, 1, 2, 3. I have that other key to paste on there, 1, 2, 3. But yeah, this is all polished type stuff. And then this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After that, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this is that middle one, or the kind of where it's most extended. I'm going to paste that. So it's sliding a little bit there. And so I'm going to extend the timeline out and just fix that. Okay, so there we go. So 44. So I'm copying that pose, pasting it onto this one, and then I'm going to check the tangents to see, yeah, there's some sort of mismatch in there. See how that translates Z's all off. We need to fix that. And that's going to be because we need to adjust this first one as well. Let's see now, yeah, because we just didn't paste in that first step at all yet. But yeah, the foot sliding is basically a pain to fix. I just wanted to show you how to fix it. And oh, it is still sliding still. Still sliding still. So I'm just gonna go in, fix it visually. Alright, copy, and then paste at the beginning. And then we need to control how it lifts out of that. And if I copy that pose right there, and that was 2 frames after that plant. So if I paste that in there, actually I'm going to paste it a little bit in right after that first step, because if I paste it right here, that's going to extend that last frame, so it's not going to loop properly in the animation, because this is the loop that we're going through right now. But if I were to paste that past this timeline, right, it would have extended the range of this walk, and then the little post-infinity cycle would then mess up with that. So there you go. Walking. But yeah, so that's how you get a walk going through your scene. In order to make it go further, you need to just kind of extend your timeline. I'm just gonna do like 200, and you can do since we have this going right here. You notice how the curves flattened out. You can cycle with offset, and this will kind of keep going. But yeah, keep in mind, guys, that we didn't even add like the down pose in this. We just did pass position contact, so you probably want to add some of that bob in there. I just wanted you to know, because that's more like a polished thing. So it's sort of these foot plant things, but I just wanted you to know how to do that if you're wondering. I know that you guys have already done some animation, so this should make sense to you already. But yeah, I just wanted you to know about that. So you can use cycle and offset for that, and you can set a key along that. So say at frame 144, I wanted that there. Notice how it set the key as an auto tangent, or like so it eases into that. You can just go in there and straighten it out like that, and yeah, start modifying that path and all that stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it for just getting a walk cycle that moves throughout a scene. That's pretty much all that there is on that. Everything else is just going into these controls, adding some more fidelity. Like you'd have to, I don't know, change the hand poses, you know, get some hip movement, make that bob down that we saw in Richard Williams' stuff. Get these arms to be less even on how they kind of swing back and forth. Get a little bit more interest in their timing in there. Yeah, that's it for now, because you know it's been a while. Thanks for watching, though. Hopefully it was helpful.